What's going on, you Jagoffs? And welcome to episode 33. Is it 33, right? Of the We Are
Believe
Family
so.
Pittsburgh Sports
Either that or
podcast.
yeah, I think you're right. If not,
Cause,
you'll see in the
We
thumbnail
we've been on a
what it is.
hiatus. We've been on a hiatus, so it's
and
hard
I
to
should,
remember
yeah,
now.
I should say welcome back because it's been 2 weeks. We've had some conflicting schedules, conflicting events, but we're
And life,
back.
life is going on.
That's kind of what I was
You said
implying.
conflicting sketch, yeah, but it's an overarching kind of thing. Life.
Okay, buddy. You want to host? You want to host the show? You're more
Yeah,
than
you
welcome to
you
host
got
the
it. No, I
show.
just wanted to chime in there real
Okay, all
quick.
right. Okay, buddy. All right. So I'm here as always. I'm Pirate Peyton, but joined by Jake Bell and Nathan interrupting Schivins, and we have a lot to get into today because it's been 2 weeks. Obviously, we have NBA and NHL playoffs. AaronRodgers is still looming somewhere, not in Pittsburgh. We don't know what's going on in his mind. He was at a concert. He was squirting a Nerf gun. What was that, Nate? He had a Nerf gun. And he
It
was
looked like a
squirting
water
water
gun or some
everywhere.
kind. Yeah, water gun, Nerf gun or something. I don't even know. He's
Well,
having a blast.
at least that's good. That's good to hear.
He went on Joe
Uh,
Rogan. He's doing it all right now, except play football and decide where he's going to spend his next season.
well, we'll get into that, but I first want to talk about our beloved Pittsburgh Pirates because it's been so long since we had this podcast. The last time when we stopped recording this podcast, Derek Shelton was still manager. And then 5 minutes later, we found out that he wasn't manager anymore. And that he was fired for. Uh, I mean, he deserved to be fired, but definitely a scapegoat in a lot of ways because Ben Sherrington has still not been held accountable, even though he says he's it's mainly his fault, but he still has a job. So I want to get into this. Nate and I have talked on Let's Talk Pittsburgh Sports about the Pirates, but Jake Bell, there's a lot on his mind, and I want him to get into the new Pirates manager, Donnie Kelly, and our current catching situation because Henry Davis is finally doing something, which is interesting, and he's looking pretty good behind the plate defensively.
Yeah, so Don Kelly, like Point Park alum, by the way, legendary people only from Point Park. So gotta give credit
Right,
where credit's
right.
due with him. I really like how he's focusing solely on being a manager. I know I've texted you guys about this, but it seemed like with Derek Shelton, he's a hitting coach by trade. That's what he's been for a while, and until he became a bench coach for the Twins and eventually the manager for the Pirates. But he was solely focused on hitting, and sometimes you can't really get a gauge of what the hitting coach can really do when the main guy is controlling one side of the ball. You see that in football as well. But as for Don Kelly, I love how he's just focused on managing, making good decisions, really trying to set the lineup best to succeed depending on the matchups, and just overall not really forcing himself to do anything just because of certain decisions. Like he's not starting Tommy Pham every day, like as more of like just to justify his signing. He's playing Canario, who has been playing pretty well. I mean, I like Don Kelly just making smart, just normal good decisions. I think that works well, and you can see a Matt Haig approach really starting to come to fruition because the Pirates are no longer looking to draw walks. Like obviously you want to draw walks, you want to get into better counts, but at the same time you can't look for walks, especially when you're not scoring runs. You want to put the ball in play, move runners over, get runners in, just play good situational baseball, and I think that's what the Pirates have been doing with Don Kelly so far.
Yeah, it's been a change certainly. There's no doubt about that. And I what are they 9-10 or something? It's still not great, but it's an improvement over 12-26 to start the year with Sheldon, almost matching those wins in only 19 games so far with Kelly as the manager. Yeah, and you've seen some interesting lineup configurations like you mentioned, Jake. You've seen IKF hitting second sometimes. You've seen IKF kind of up higher in the lineup. You've seen Hayes drop down, and you've seen Tommy Pham completely left out of most of the lineup so far, actually, with Don Kelly. I mean, he played like one time this past week. Like he started one game, and Canario was in the outfield starting almost every one of those games. That's something that, and maybe Schoen would have done that. Maybe Schoen was reaching kind of his breaking point with Tommy Pham. But I think you just see kind of an aggressive nature with Don Kelly that kind of wasn't there, and some enthusiasm. I was talking with Peyton about this. You see the thumbnails for all these videos of Don Kelly's post games, and even in losses, he's upbeat, he's energized because baseball is a long season. We all know that it's 162 games. There's going to be losses, and the Pirates have had some good losses, if there is such a thing, where they've been battling. They've been in these games where they lost on Sunday when they lost to the Brewers 6-5. It was a crushing loss kind of because you had that game. Frazier went off, but your offense looked a lot better, and you showed fight after being down 3-0 right out of the gate. So I think that is a welcome sign with Don Kelly, and taking 2 of 3 in Arizona. Nobody thought that was going to happen. Nobody did. I think there was a much higher probability they would have got swept in Arizona than winning 2 of 3, just because I can't remember. What did you, Peyton? You said like the last time they won a series in Arizona was 2016, something
April
like that.
2016, which
Like
doesn't
in
surprise
Arizona?
me. In
Arizona.
Arizona. But that doesn't surprise me at all because we never win there. It's a house of horrors for us.
Right. And
This is the worst team we've had since 2016, arguably. Well, no, 2020 was much worse.
Yeah.
And 2021 probably, but yeah.
Well, they're turning it around. Bucktober baseball. We're ready for it here. 21-36. But I think this was a great series, and 9 and 10 runs scored. It's unbelievable. It really is. I didn't think it was possible this season, but it does show. And I think we all thought this, even though this offense was just dreadful. We thought it wasn't going to be great going into the season. We all thought they can't play any worse. So they have to go up from here offensively. Some guys getting a couple guys back. They're just getting Reynolds out of his slump a little bit. And some other guys, just Canario playing much better than to start. And a lot of guys, and Henry Davis, finding something here a little bit maybe. I think it's shown that there is some steps the Pirates offense can take. And again, I think we've been talking about this. If they're like the 21st or 22nd ranked offense in baseball, and you pair that with one of the top 5 maybe starting rotations, and if this bullpen can ever figure it out consistently, then you can compete. You can compete for a wild card. You could, but since they're literally, I think they passed the Rockies in runs scored last night. Actually, they've scored more runs than Colorado. They're now 29th in runs scored, and the Rangers and the Royals are right there too. So they're not too far off from like 25th. But if they could have been playing kind of like what we saw the past 2 games, playing like this, or even just a little bit, just with more aggressive swings and swinging early in the counts instead of being so passive and seeing strike 3 go right by with runners on, they could have been in a much better spot at this juncture of the season. But it is a welcome sign to see them playing so well right now.
Well, on that point, you said yesterday against Zach Gallen, God bless him, he's been terrible this year. I don't know what happened to him, but they were swinging at the first pitch. Henry Davis, his success, he had 4 hits on 4 pitches, I believe. So they've been a little more aggressive offensively, and I think that's a good sign. And maybe that's Matt Haig's influence, and Don Kelly's just letting, like you said, Jake, letting Matt. I don't know if you said this, but we talked about this. Just letting Matt Haig do his job and let Don Kelly manage. And what I really like about Don Kelly, there's been a couple bullpen decisions that have been but this bullpen is average, very average to below average. So he's in a tough spot. Without Justin Lawrence, we're missing some guys. right, Cullen Holderman, he's hurt and can't do anything. So it's not an easy job to manage this bullpen. But what I like about what Don Kelly brings to the table, like you said, Nate, he brings energy, number one. Because Derek Shelton was just exhausted, I think. And I think he kind of lost the room. But what I mainly like, other than that energy and that positivity, and like he said when he was first hired, he said, I'm going to make sure everyone's being held accountable, which I thought was really interesting because that kind of is like, well, was Shelton holding people accountable enough? Was he too much of a player's coach? But what I keep missing the main, what I'm trying to say is the fact that they hired Gene Lamont as a special advisor who worked with Jim Leyland for years tells me that Jim Leyland and Gene Lamont, both successful man, obviously Jim Leyland's a Hall of Famer, but Gene Lamont had his success too. Both of these guys know what it takes to create a winning culture, a winning clubhouse, a winning team on the field, are in Don Kelly's ear. Now Jim Leyland was kind of close with Shelton, but Don Kelly played for Derek Shelton. I mean, John Kelly was a Major League Baseball player. I think that's a huge part of what he brings to the table, too, is he can relate to the players more. But the fact that those guys are in his ear and they're mentoring Don Kelly as he takes on this new role, I think is going to lead him to possibly be a successful manager. Now, whether that's here in Pittsburgh for the long term, I don't know. But I think that those guys having an influence on him is going to really help him be successful.
No, I absolutely agree. Like, if Don Kelly at all has a winning record to end the season, even if it's a game above 500 as a manager himself, I mean, you have to, I feel like, try to see what you can do with a full year. Just because if it's not broke, you don't want to fix it, right? I mean, if you get a whole new manager, it might be a whole new culture. You don't want, like, I don't know. If it's working, you don't want to go through this entire shuffle. And it's not like Don Kelly is just some random bench coach that we had, like whenever Hurdle got fired and we had Tom Prince manage a game. You know, that it's not like that situation. You know, Don Kelly, he's a very smart baseball mind. I think we've all known. I mean, it's a big reason why he was able to stay on the Tigers for a while. Jim Leyland loved just how he was a smart baseball mind in general whenever he was a manager with the Tigers. But I think...
And he could play multiple positions, too.
Right?
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I kind of want... I know we there's a lot we could talk about Don Kelly. I do kind of want to transition to the catching situation, if that's okay.
Yeah,
absolutely. But with Joey Bart being out with a concussion, was it 7 days on the IL, I want to say, so about a week.
Yeah.
So it seems like even with Andrew Rodriguez coming back up, I would imagine Henry Davis is catching a majority of the time, especially with him swinging a better bat as of recently. And it's kind of interesting because it actually kind of goes perfectly with Andrew Rodriguez can catch maybe once or twice a week, because if you look at the ERAs of the pitchers with Henry Davis catching, Paul Skeens has a 1.75, Mitch Keller 2.84 with Davis catching. And then you have Falter, who does better with Bart, but in one game that Davis did catch, he went 7 scoreless. But to me, with Andrew Heaney being the only pitcher that really struggles with Henry Davis behind the dish, I would imagine Andrew Rodriguez catches for him. So it kind of, and Mike Burrows, you can kind of go in between because he's struggled. Maybe you want Davis there because he has been doing well, especially as a pitch caller. But right now he has 2 defensive runs saved. I think it definitely... Like, if Henry Davis has a very good week, I think it's going to put some sense of urgency into Joey Bart, who has not been swinging a good bat, who is now hurt. I mean, we know how well he did offensively last year, but we know his time at the Giants didn't go so well, and maybe it can maybe go towards maybe a position change, maybe have Joey Bart DH more games, catch a little bit less, maybe only whenever Andrew Heaney pitches, because Heaney pitches very well whenever Bart does catch, but maybe limit the time Bart catches, because you draft Henry Davis first overall. You want him to be the complete guy, right? That's what you draft him at first overall. And it seems like Henry Davis so far has it figured out defensively. And now he's just letting the bat rip. So we'll see what happens there. But I think the catching situation got a lot more interesting now with Henry Davis swinging a better bat, and if he can keep this up, we'll see if Joey Bart can maybe match that as the summer rolls around.
Yeah, what a development. Henry Davis is an incredible defensive catcher now. I mean, what, 2 years ago, they were at the end of 2023, they had him in right field. You know, like they had him
And he
out
was
of
terrible
position.
in right field.
Yeah, he had
And he was
negative
bad.
9 defensive runs saved out there. Like,
But like, yeah, he was bad in right as well. But like, why was he out in right field? Because he wasn't a good defensive catcher at all, right? But the work he's put in, it's a real testament to him. And you got to give some credit to the Pirates for developing him defensively. Now, if they could develop some offensive talent, that would be nice. That would actually be nice as well.
That would be ideal.
We'll take what we can get here. But yeah, what a transformation defensively for Davis, to the point now where, oh, maybe Bart moves positions. Like, we were saying that going into spring training anyway, Jake. Remember, Jake, we were talking about Bart would be like a perfect, like if Spencer Horwitz is a platoon guy, Bart could be a platoon guy at first base with Horwitz. We were saying, like, why aren't the Pirates playing him at first a little bit in spring training, get him some reps there maybe, so that Davis, who was looking better defensively, and even at that point and Rodriguez, we were saying Rodriguez primarily as that defensive catcher, could play catcher primarily, but Bart could still fill in as a first baseman against lefties. He's hammered lefties this year. He's been awful against righties, but he could play against all lefties. It'd be that platoon there, and then could DH when Kutch needs a day, or if Kutch is in the outfield and you want to give Canario a day, or whatever. I still think that's possible, but I think in the season it's less likely now. But it will be really interesting to see what they do. I think they will carry all three of them when Bart's healthy. I really do. And I think Solak is probably sent down or somebody like that. But Solak's it's a great story and everything. But as we've seen, AAA to the big leagues is a bigger gap than ever. It is crazy. I mean, he was in 390 down there, and he's playing sparingly, but he's not hitting. He's playing once a week, but I think that will be the scenario. And I think somebody's got to play a different position. If all three of them are kept on the active major league roster when all three are healthy, it will be interesting to see what Don Kelly and the Pirates do there, because I do think Endy can hit. I really do. I know he hasn't shown that yet, but he's always been able to hit. That's always been one of his probably his best tool. So I think he will, with more playing time, get hits. But the problem is, it's now with all three of them up. When all three of them are up, it's going to be hard getting playing time to everybody consistently, especially Rodriguez and Davis, who I think are still developing as hitters, and even Bart to a certain extent developing as hitters, and need those constant reps to really get better. But I think with Bart on the IL right now, yeah, Davis should get the bulk of the catching duties, and then Endy was playing first. I mean, he could play first a little bit too, but I would rather see him as a catcher and rather see Bart, who's a worse defender than both of them, try to be a little more versatile and maybe play first. I know it's not as easy as it seems. You can just go over there and play first and be okay. It's not as easy as that. But place a little first and DH a little bit just to get his bat in the lineup, but to get more defensive versatility out of all of them.
Well, yeah, it's very complicated situation. A lot of things to touch on. Number one, I have to give you both credit, because you guys were on this in the spring. Joey Bart should be playing first base. He's much worse defensively than I guess I thought originally. But look, I don't really hold it too much against him, because I value his bat. Now, his bat has not been good the last 2-3 weeks. It's not been that great. But I still think that he's a guy they need to keep around for 2026. Now, he's going to have to prove it, but I think he's going to end up okay, this is a guy we need in our lineup. But now it's what do you do with him? Because if you would have been ahead of this and got him reps at first base, and realized that Henry Davis was getting better defensively. We know what Endy Rodriguez is as a catcher, right? Now you have Endy at first. Like, how do you don't know how it's a very complicated situation with all three of them. What do you do? I don't know. I mean, you want all three of them on the big league roster, but how do you fit them with playing time? Especially, you could say Bart should do DH more, but right now Kutch is your DH. So, although I could honestly be fine with Kutch playing more right field. He's proven he can play that. I think for all three of them to fit on the roster, Jared Triolo is going to have to be sent down. But they're never willing to do that. So
Two
I
hits
don't know.
yesterday. 2 hits.
Okay. But they're never willing to do that. So right now, I have to assume with Bart on the IL that Henry Davis and Endy Rodriguez are going to have to battle out. This is like a battle. This is going to be a battle for who stays on the roster and who's in AAA Indianapolis. Now, Henry Davis certainly has a head start based on how he's hit the last week or two. Okay, it's been a week or two. I'm not big on Henry Davis's bat. I'm just not. But, I mean, he has done well. He had a big series in Arizona, and you got to give him credit. He's the reason we won 2 out of 3, because if he doesn't come into that game when Bart gets hurt, he's the one who hits the 2-run homer. I mean, he had like 4 hits in 2 games. So, I don't know. I don't know. It's hard for me to judge the situation. I like Endy Rodriguez over. I've always been higher on Endy Rodriguez, but Henry Davis was the number 1 overall pick. You would hope he would work out in some capacity. And I'm glad he's a good defensive catcher, because now you can say, okay, because going into the season, we're like, what do we do with him long term? Okay, whether he's with the Pirates or not, he's going to be a catcher. I think he's made that pretty clear based on how he's done defensively. But it's an interesting situation, and Endy Rodriguez is a little behind because, right, he didn't play all last year. Struggled to start this year. He got hurt. Now he's put into this situation. So it's kind of a mess. But I don't know what they do. I really don't know how they figure it out. You just got to find a way to get all 3 of those guys as much playing time as you can. And I feel like that's going to end up with one of them being in AAA Indianapolis. And I think it might be Endy, because he's just behind.
Yeah, I guess it depends what they want to do. Like with Nick Solak only been playing first base for the Pirates, that I feel like would be the other option, because maybe they want to have Endy more at first base. But yeah, I mean, it's
you have to remember, Nick Gonzalez is coming back very soon.
True.
So it's like, yeah, Nick Solak will be gone, but Nick Gonzalez will be back.
Right.
I feel like Jared Triolo has to be the odd man out, but it seems like they don't. I mean, they're selling his figurine. They're giving out figurines of Jared Triolo. We love the Jared Triolo figurine and the Gold Glove, but I mean, what are we gonna do with his bat? It's just not. It's not worth being on the team right now. When you're trying to figure out what you're gonna do for next year, as far as Bart, Rodriguez, and Davis are concerned, that is much more important than keeping Triolo on the roster.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do think he should be when Gonzo comes back, which looks like it might be next week, because he's playing in Indy right now. He played yesterday, had a nice line drive knock. I was watching their game. That was a terrible game. Harrington got destroyed. It was terrible, but Gonzo, he's playing well. He hasn't hit that well, but he's getting his groove under him. We saw Horowitz, he really struggled to start, and then he got it going at the end, and then the Pirates activated him. But yeah, he's going to be up, and I think, yeah, with those two, Triolo's going to have to, or Tommy Pham is designated for assignment, but we know that's not going to happen.
Nope.
So, and he's over 200 now. He's over the Mendoza line. So he's really cooking right now. And we really got to keep him on, because who knows what he's going to hit when he hits that first homer. And they're going to come in bunches, folks. He's going to really
We're going to have an emergency podcast for Tommy Pham's
first homer. Yeah, no, but to his credit, he has been hitting the ball harder. Tommy Pham. He hasn't struck out as much, but yeah, I think
then he does something stupid like getting picked off at second base.
Yeah.
How do you get picked? You're not going anywhere. How do you get picked off at second base? Are you daydreaming because you got a hit? Like I just I don't.
He was thinking about it. He was thinking about how many career hits he has now after that.
I don't. He's just I don't. I'll never understand that signing. But yeah, I want to end with this. Going back to Don Kelly, I want to end this part of the show with this. Look, here's my thing. Here's what I'm afraid of, okay? Yeah, Jake Bell, if this team goes over 500 with Donnie Kelly, the Pirates will have no choice but to keep him for next year, I think. But if he doesn't, let's just say he finishes 5 under 500 with the Pirates. Which I think, look, this team is not good. It's just not very good offensively. It's the bullpen has been a complete disappointment. There's a good chance that he probably doesn't end up with a winning record. But if he shows that he could control a clubhouse, that he could make good decisions, that he could bring the energy needed to the team, like, my question is, like, is he going to be another scapegoat? Because they're going to end up with 70 wins, maybe, right? I mean, and I don't know if they decide to keep Ben Sherrington for next year, which is a possibility. Like, and I hate to say that it is a possibility. Like, is Don Kelly automatically a scapegoat, or are they actually going to evaluate him not just from a wins and losses standpoint, but from a managerial standpoint?
That's definitely an interesting point. I think it all depends on, like, if he's Charrington's guy. Like, I feel like if Charrington stays, I feel like there's more of a chance he will stay. If the new GM comes in, I'm not so sure. So I think it all depends on what ends up happening from a management standpoint.
There has to be a new GM. This is ridiculous. He probably will be the scapegoat. If they finish 73 and 89, he'll be the scapegoat probably at the end of the season, and that'll draw even more fervor between the fan base, angst towards this group, this ownership group, and this management group, because it really is just awful that he's still the general manager. I just can't wrap my head around it. He's just been so bad at his job, but. Yeah, no, I honestly have no idea how the rest of the season is going to go. It is interesting because they have been playing better. If half of what this offense had showed up in Arizona, if half of that shows up the rest of the year, they could win some series. You get the Rockies, you get the Marlins, you get the White Sox, but they'll probably find a way to lose those games. But I think there is some optimism because, look, they finished 76 and 86 last year, but they were over 500, just kind of collapsed at the end of the season. I think they could play 500. If you could play a little better than 500, win your division games, you could be a little bit better than you were last year. And now the possibility of 76 and 86 finish is still in play, I think, here. If that happens again, Don Kelly has to be brought back because
Yeah.
that means he would go not only over 500, but we would continue. We won more this year, actually. We won more than last year and the year before when we won 76, because Charrington's twisted mind thinks that 76 is greater than 76.
And that's what I'm worried about is, like, if Don Kelly does well and they do have an over 500 record with Shelton, not only are they going to, obviously you bring back Don Kelly, that's fine, but then they're going to say, well, we're going to keep Ben Sherrington because we got better as the year went on. But you ended up with the same results as the last 2 years. That's not better. That's not, like, this team, and to think that this team right now is going to, I know things have been looking a little better, but this team is not going to,
need to see a lot more.
They're not going to finish anywhere close to a playoff spot. So, like, Something has to. You can't just say, "Oh, we fired Shelton," and that fixes everything, because it's not. But I've talked about this. Huntington got a lot of chances, and I think Nutting's gonna have a hard time pulling the plug on Sherrington, possibly, especially if Kelly. I don't know. I have a bad feeling about it, but we'll see what happens. And I think it's going to depend if Sherrington. I mean, if Sherrington has a bad deadline, there's no
That's inevitable.
reason you keep him. So I think that could be a big factor as well. So we'll see what happens.
That is an interesting question. What do they do at the deadline? Because you have Heaney, you have some guys that are on expiring contracts that you'll probably trade off, but you'll get next to nothing back. You get the same prospects, lower level prospects that obviously we can't develop the best players we acquire. So how can we develop those kind of players? So it will be interesting. What does Charity get aggressive and try to get a bat for pitching and maybe do a buy sell approach? I don't know.
That's what I would do. I would sell off guys that are on the last year of their deal and grab in major league players that have multiple years of control. I don't know how much of that will be available, but I would try to get controllable bats.
And me and Kane were talking about this.
Right. If you're Sherrington, you're gearing up for next year. You're not gearing up for 2028. They're not gonna trade Skeens. So, right? I mean, they've said that that's out of the question.
Yeah, I believe them. I truly do. I don't think Skeens
I do
is
too.
anywhere, so
no, not yet, and not this year anyway. But yeah, they gotta find a way to get offense. They just gotta find a way, and it has to be not for 2020 down the line, like now, like for going into next year. Get some guys here who are under control and who are big league ready.
And Payne, we were talking about this. Maybe a Mitch Keller deal, right? Maybe something like that. That might be a possibility to get a bat. And we were talking about. I think
he's your number one trade piece because.
Yeah.
Because, and I love Mitch Keller, I do. But we see Bubba Chandler coming up. We see what Braxton Ashcraft is capable of already. Mitch Keller, they gave him a big contract for reasons we're not different. There's theories on why they did that. But if they're going to spend on offense the way they need to, they're going to have to dump salary. They're just going to have to. They have no choice because, right, we saw this year they didn't spend it all. And they were at like 80 million or 75 million. It was like, we don't have enough room to spend. So you have to make room. And Mitch Keller has a lot of money on his that would certainly make room. Another guy that keeps getting a lot of money, he got a lot of money this year in arbitration, and he's been better lately, but I don't know if he's worth it keeping around, is David Bednar, because I think this is a topic we can get into another time. I think this bullpen needs to be retold completely, and I don't completely trust David Bednar anymore. And my hope is that he has a good stretch and that we can get the value close to the value we may have once got for him, for a team that's desperate, for teams that are desperate for bullpen that are trying to win a pennant. And there are teams, believe me.
Yeah, there will be a lot
that would be desperate enough. What's that?
Oh, no, I was just agreeing with that. Like, there's going to be teams that are desperate, that are going to want relievers because that wins you playoff games.
Talk about desperate. Arizona, oh my lord. They got to do something fast. I saw Torey Lovello was very angry in his post-game press conference yesterday because, I mean, now they didn't hit yesterday, but they also, like, this bullpen, I knew it was bad, but, like, they're throwing Scott McGuff out there.
Plum guy. Let's go, Plum.
Oh, is he?
He is a Plum guy, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
But he was somebody who played, like, in 2015. He was as a rookie, and then he was gone for 7-8 years, and then he comes back, and like he's not. And Kevin Ginkles had a terrible. Like these guys, they have like one or two good relievers they can rely on, but a lot of these teams, the Phillies, and there's a lot of teams. The Cubs need bullpen help as well. There's a lot of teams that need bullpen help that they think if they get that help could put them over the edge. So I think there will be teams in on Bednar, Ryan Barucki if he kind of turns around a little bit, Caleb Ferguson. This whole bullpen almost could be open for business because it hasn't been effective, first off, and so you can live with revamping it completely. And teams are desperate for bullpen help around the trade deadline and going into August and September. So I could definitely see that, but I do think Charrington would do a sort of buy-sell approach with the buying geared towards the end of
Offense.
2025 and going into 2026 on the offensive side, no doubt.
Similar way you did
And
last year,
acquiring
kind of,
younger
in a smaller scale.
relievers. Acquire some younger relievers who are maybe in the minors or about to come up or whatever.
But you can
that's
also,
what we did with Colin Holderman when we got him, right?
Yeah, but also a lot of these pitching prospects the Pirates have, not all of them are going to be in the rotation. That's just the reality.
Right.
You can
and
move
it's like,
three
let's
of
try
them.
those guys in the bullpen.
Yeah, you can move three of them to the pen, and they could some of them could be long relievers, whatever. Mix and
Hunter
match.
Barco would be a big one.
Hunter
'cause of his
Barco, now
injury.
he's hurt right now, but I think he would be
Exactly, like just to limit his injury, move him to the pen. Don't have him throw
right.
long innings.
Right, he's nasty. He's really nasty. So there's a lot of things the Pirates could do here, but it will be interesting to see how they get through this kind of stretch here, and see when the schedule lightens up if they play any better and try to get towards a 500 or better record with Donnie Ball.
Okay, so we're gonna transition to our next topic, which is your Pittsburgh Steelers and Aaron Rodgers. Still, we're not on the team. Steelers are in day 3 of OTAs. I think based on how things were going, we expected that Rodgers would not be at OTAs. I think there was a hope that he would be signed by then, but that has not happened. Speculation is that we keep hearing this from time to time, but I think a lot of people keep just assuming he's coming to Pittsburgh, that he is waiting out Minnesota. But I don't understand that because clearly, Kevin O'Connell, he's a good buds with, so maybe he's just waiting that out. But they're clearly you spent a first-round pick on J.J. McCarthy. I don't see how they don't start J.J. McCarthy this year. Because if you sign Aaron, you're not going to put Aaron on the bench. He'll just retire. I don't know what he's waiting for. And frankly, I was thinking about this last night. It's exhausting. This whole thing is just exhausting. I mean, Mason Rudolph's in OTAs. He's getting asked.
With the mustache.
The first thing they ask him about is AaronRodgers. Yeah, with the mustache. But instead of asking him about, his process and how he's feeling, what do you think about AaronRodgers? What's he supposed to say to that? It's just a big distraction. This team is not going to go anywhere with AaronRodgers. I mean, they might be a little better with AaronRodgers, but it's not going to change the main issues, right? He's not the long-term answer. But they're so into the belief that they need a veteran quarterback to help them win now, and it's not gonna move the needle. It's just not. Anyway, I'll say, but I want to hear your thoughts. I mean, I feel like at this point it's just like I'd be excited if Aaron would come. Like, it would be very entertaining. Don't get me wrong. It would be very, very entertaining, and it would be fun to watch him play. But at what point it's just like enough's enough with this? Like, I feel like if he's not here by mandatory minicamp, like, you have to be done with this. And going to get Kirk Cousins, that is the last thing I want out of all of this. Ride with Mason Rudolph. There's not a difference right now between Mason Rudolph and Kirk Cousins. And I think Mason Rudolph, in fact, is a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins. So
at this stage,
just go with Mason and be done with it. Like, I don't care what, the national storyline is. Oh, well, Mason Rudolph, I don't care what people say. Okay? We need to just get through this season and prepare for the future.
Yeah, I want to pretty much state this out that from the Steelers' moves, letting go of some guys, getting compensation picks, they're trying to build for the draft next year in Pittsburgh. And while Aaron Rodgers does give you the best chance to win, he's not a bum. Even though he's in his 40s, he's not a bum.
No one's
he's
saying
a
that.
Solid,
yeah,
exactly. He's a good, solid quarterback. He's going to put the Steelers in playoff contention, to say the least. But is that what you really want? And if you're building for next year's draft, if he wins you 10 games, that makes it so much harder to move up, assuming that's why they're accumulating all these draft picks to do, right? Is to trade up in the first round for a quarterback. Drafting a quarterback in the 20s or 30s overall, like, there's not going to be a Lamar Jackson in every single draft. And you just have to prepare for that. And I feel like if you start Mason Rudolph the first half of the season, start Will Howard the second half, what do you have to lose? I know rushing a quarterback, especially a 6th-round quarterback in his rookie year, is not going to work out 9 times out of 10. At the same time, if you're planning on drafting a quarterback in the first round anyway next year, what do you have to lose from seeing what Will Howard could do in half of a season, right? I don't think that's a risk that you're not willing to take. I feel like I would do that. And with Aaron Rodgers, good quarterback, but like you said, Peyton, a huge distraction, especially when, a lot of these players are trying to get accumulated with their team, trying to build that chemistry. You don't want to be worrying about someone that's not on your team. And I feel like you just don't want to be involved with that if you're the Steelers, right? You don't want to be handcuffed by a player that is not on your team. And I don't think the Steelers would be doing justice relying on a veteran quarterback because they want to get to that playoff contention window. You want to get your quarterback of the future. And if you win 10 games with Aaron Rodgers, it makes that so much more difficult to do that.
Yeah, I agree, Jake, 100%. It is exhausting. It really is, especially for us who are like, all in and just paying attention to see what's going on. Even in the off season, it's just a lot. It's a lot with Aaron Rodgers and what he's going to do. Some people hang on every word he says and everything, so for them it's even worse. But yeah, if you get him, you're 9-8, 10-7. We all know that. It's just going to be the same old, same old. And at this point, that's a great point you made, Jake, about trading up, because I think even if Mason Rudolph starts, they'll find their way to 7-8 wins. I really do. And so they're still going to have to trade up, I think, either way. I just don't think they're going to finish bottom 4 in the NFL. Like some power rankings had them like 28, 29. I still think the roster around Mason Rudolph and a Will Howard is good enough to get you, and Mike Tomlin is good enough to get you to 7, 8 wins, and maybe even 9. Who knows?
But I could easily see a 9-win season with Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, I could too. You could always see a 9-8 with the Pittsburgh Steelers with Mike Tomlin. No nonsense guy, Mike Tomlin. But yeah, I think that would be the correct course of action. Just roll with Mason Rudolph for the first 10, 11, 12 games of the season. See where you're at. If you're really down in the dumps, give Will Howard a shot. See what he's got. Might as well. And maybe improve your draft stock. Or if you're, you just want to ride Mason Rudolph the rest of the season, whatever. I would like to see, personally, Mason Rudolph start first 10, 11 games and then see what Will Howard has. And because that would signal that they're looking towards 2026 and towards the draft of quarterback. Now, I will say, I'm not as high on some of these quarterbacks in this 2026 draft as some people are. I still need to see something from Drew Aller. I just all these Penn State fans Steelers Drew Aller. I need to see some things still, because I know he didn't have receivers last year, but he wasn't elevating anybody. I want my quarterback to elevate those around him and everything. He had a great run game and everything. So I need to see something from Drew Aller. I need to see something from Cade Klubnik. Everybody's saying, just because he goes to Clemson, he's a quarterback. He's the next, Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson kind of thing. And he's mocked right up there. The Arizona State, Sam Levitt. Is he a franchise? We're looking for a franchise quarterback here, and the Steelers need to get one very soon, as soon as possible, 2026. And I don't know about some of these options for next season. Maybe it's one of these other quarterbacks that are kind of flying under the radar. We always see it every year. Kind of takes a step and then you're like, oh, that's a first round talent. That's somebody the Steelers or any team could look at, and any of these guys could take a next step as well. I'm not saying Drew or K Club they can't, but I'm sure they will play better with another year in their system and everything. I'm just not as high as some of these analysts are on all these quarterbacks in this next draft. So I'm kind of worried. My worry is that the Steelers do have a bad year, and they get they trade up or they get like the seventh, eighth pick or something, and they get the second or third best quarterback, and he's not at all what they thought he was, and he doesn't perform, and it's just the same kind of thing, and who knows? I don't trust the Steelers in developing a young quarterback as well with the personnel on that coaching staff that they've had over the years. So it's all a lot of hoping and wishing and really praying for the Steelers fan base so they can find their next Big Ben and really get this thing on the right foot towards 2026 and beyond. But yeah, I think at this point, like you mentioned, Peyton, Aaron Rodgers, you love to see it'll be more exciting. There'll be more cool storylines. There'll be more kind of controversial things that are kind of funny to talk about during an otherwise unfunny season. But I think the right thing for this franchise would be to have a down year maybe, or just ride with Mason Rudolph and see what you get and see what you have in Will Howard, because folks are gushing about Will Howard. They're watching him in OTAs complete one pass and they're like, oh my gosh, what a what a player, which is what you do in OTAs anyway, because there's nothing else to look at, there's nothing else to watch. It's like spring training, but Kevin Newman hit 700. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, is he going to take the next step? And people are saying that Shedeur Sanders was like killing it in OTAs a couple days ago, and everybody's like, he's our quarterback one, he's going to lead us to the promised land. People are dreaming in OTAs right now, and but it will be interesting to see where the Steelers go. It does paint the Steelers in a terrible light right now. This is so funny for me because everybody's bashing the Steelers, and rightfully so, because they're resting their 2025 season on a quarterback that might rather retire than play for your franchise. It says a lot. It's so funny. It shows how desperate they are. It kind of shows how they've fallen from grace, which was just 10, 15 years ago. They've really fallen as a franchise in many people's eyes.
Well, I'll say this. I'll end this part with this, and Jake, I'm going to add a little on to this, but what this tells me about this whole situation, it tells me two things. One thing about Aaron Rodgers and one thing about the Steelers. And here's what I'll say. Aaron Rodgers, I understand that he has issues or whatever. Okay, I'm not going to say, that he's lying or anything. But this is a constant theme with him ever since he won his last MVP. This off-season drama of some capacity. Right? Some years have been... I gotta charge my computer. Some years have been bigger than, more dramatic than others. Although this year, by far, I think is the most dramatic. But, clearly, ever since 2022, winning has not been his main priority. And committing to a team has not been his main priority because he consistently does not show up to an OTA to whatever team he's on. And consistently, it's always about him in the end. And it's not about the team. And I'm not saying he's a bad teammate, but that's what it shows that's from the outside, that's what it looks like. And that's what it seems like for a lot of his Steelers teammates, especially these veteran guys who have been here, done that, like Cam Hayward, like TJ Watt. But what this also shows about the Steelers is that they have no urgency, no morals about getting the quarterback situation right and about doing what's best for the franchise for the long term, because they never have had a good plan. You look at Green Bay, they're always drafting quarterbacks. That's why they haven't drafted. They haven't. I forget. There was some sort of stat. They haven't started a rookie at quarterback since 1987 or something. Like, they've always had a plan. Okay? And the Steelers they're just trying to figure it out as they go. So in that way, Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers are a perfect fit because there's no accountability. There's no urgency. No accountability is the main thing.
I mean, a lot of people don't realize that Patrick Mahomes sat an entire year, and then he became the best quarterback of our generation. So I feel like if you have that plan, if you have a quarterback that's willing to learn behind the quarterback, but also, have a lot of focus and drive to be that starter. But if you have someone that's going to work behind a veteran quarterback who's had success, I mean, usually it turns out pretty well. I feel like a lot of quarterbacks that we see that have these Hall of Fame trajectories, they've sat behind the quarterback. So just something interesting to kind of think about.
Yeah, it's a good point, Peyton, about the Steelers. They haven't had a lot of it is, I think, accountability. I think that's part of it, but I think another part of it is they don't know what they're doing. Like a part of it is they don't want to make that big swing or make an aggressive move for a quarterback because they don't know if they're going to make the right decision. They don't have that confidence. I think the Kenny Pickett draft pick, whatever you think of it and of him, it kind of shook them in their kind of decision making as to, do we actually know what a good quarterback looks like? Do we? And it's hard to find. It's really hard to find that and have an understanding of what the better quarterbacks and project those quarterbacks. What are they going to be in the NFL? It really is incredibly difficult, and only a handful of teams, maybe 10 teams, know exactly what they're looking for and what it takes out of a quarterback. But it's clear the Steelers do not. The Steelers are not one of those teams. I think as a result, that being the most important position in the NFL, they have kind of fallen down the rung of franchises, and they're on a list of 8 consecutive years without a playoff win, on it with the likes of Miami and the Jets and the Chicago Bears and teams of that nature. So I think it is a sign that, yeah, there's the part of it is there's not really much accountability in it, but I think it also is they're not quite sure what they're looking for and what the quarterback that would lead them to the promised land would look like, and they don't want to make that big splash move like they may have done with Kenny Pickett, and then it bites them in the butt down the road. I think they're a little bit scared. I think they are a little bit scared and worried that could happen with somebody. But I think you just you could do this you could take a quarterback every draft. And we just saw with the Browns. In some aspects, I kind of like what the Browns did because there's like, all right, we have a bunch of quarterbacks here. Somebody's got to hit. Somebody's got to do something, and we're gonna try them all out.
You could say, as much as dysfunctional as the Browns are, at least the Browns are doing what's necessary. They're throwing darts at the dartboard and hoping something lands.
Yeah, so we'll see what where that ends up. And another interesting wrinkle: Kenny Pickett's like the favorite for the starting job right now. That would be something.
That would be awesome.
He looks very mature at the podium. Stefanski was nothing but praise for Kenny Pickett, so that was an interesting development there. But that will be something we'll follow as well throughout the off season, what the Browns are going to do there. But I think you could do that every year. You could draft a quarterback every year in the later rounds or whatever, and see what you got, and just see if one of them hits. But the Steelers, who are an organization, they're still in that defensive mindset. We saw with the first round pick. I think we all liked the pick, but they had a defense heavy draft again, and that's normally what they do, and it's something they don't shy away from. But in an offense first league, they're kind of getting passed by, and I think they need to adjust a little bit to the times to kind of get back to where they should be, being the Pittsburgh Steelers, being an iconic franchise, competing for Super Bowls.
Yeah, so I forget what I was gonna say, but I do want to take a look at the Steelers' schedule and to get your guys' thoughts, because it's kind of set up like last year in that the first part of their schedule is much easier than the second half of their schedule. Now, if Aaron does sign, it'll be quite the week one matchup in terms of storylines. Justin Fields against AaronRodgers in New York at MetLife Stadium against the Jets. And there'll be a lot of pressure. That game, that's a lot of pressure on the Steelers because you waited all that time for AaronRodgers while Justin Fields is working his butt off in New York. Like, Aaron is the veteran quarterback, has to come away and win that game, or else you're on it. That could really set a very bad tone for the season. Then the home opener against the Seahawks. Then you got New England. You think
That's
you should
actually
win
a
that
crazy
game.
home opener because of DK Metcalf too.
Yeah, that's another storyline. They do this stuff on purpose. And then at New England, that's a game you probably need to win. But New England, I mean, they're a team that's going to be better this year.
People are high
that.
on New England this year. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, some people are very high.
Maybe a
on
little
them.
too high.
I would love Drake May on this team though.
Drake May, I mean, he looked good last year, man. I agree. I think, and you got Mike Vrabel. Like it'll be an interesting team this year. And then at Minnesota, you go to Ireland. Then after the Ireland thing, you have your bye. Week 5, and that's just a necessary bye if you're going overseas like that. Then home against Cleveland, at Cincinnati. The only Sunday night game of the year will be at home against Green Bay. That will be cinema if Aaron is there. He's not faced the Packers yet since he's left. Home against Indianapolis should be a win, right? You have to so weeks 1 through 9. Other than Green Bay, Cincinnati, Minnesota, and Seattle, I mean, but in comparison to who you face after that, week 13, Buffalo. Then you have Baltimore, week 14, week 18. You have Detroit, week 16. I believe weeks 11 through 18, which includes Cincinnati, Chicago, Buffalo, Baltimore, Miami, Detroit, Cleveland. That is, I think I saw something that is the toughest, and actually weeks 10 through 18.
At the Chargers. At the Chargers.
Yeah, at the Chargers. That weeks 10 through 18, the Steelers have the hardest schedule in the NFL right now. So, once again, Mike Tomlin and company is tested at the end of the season. Can they finally prove that they could play good football and not have a bad stretch at the end of the season? And I don't see why I would think that. So, just any takes on the schedule? Any other main
honestly,
takes?
if you look at schedule, it's just something you just can't be afraid of, right? If you're a football team that has big aspirations, you have to beat the best, right? I mean, as much as, we can give a lot of the blame last year on why they had a bad end to the year was because of their schedule. It's that shouldn't be an excuse, right? You're the Pittsburgh Steelers, the 6 Super Bowls. I mean, I would like to say wow, this is going to be a tough schedule, but at the same time, it's so what? You have to beat the best to be the best. I know that's a little cliche, but in the playoffs, you're going to be facing these teams anyway if you're that good of a team, right? So it's just something you're going to have to deal with and find ways to win these games.
They need to lose them anyway.
You were 10-3 last year.
Yeah. I hope Mike Tomlin collapses. I said they need to lose them anyway. I hope Mike Tomlin collapses in December again. I hope by at that point they're 5-8 or something, and then they just fall even further. But some interesting wrinkles. It is funny with the schedule. A ton of it hinges on Aaron Rodgers, right? If at the Jets, the game at home against the Packers, I mean, and even at the Bears, if he doesn't sign there, those are just kind of nothing burgers, because he's the headline for all of these. It's Aaron against the team that he was spent his whole career, or the Green Bay Packers. Oh, Aaron, he just had disastrous tenure in New York against Justin. Now there's still the Justin Fields thing the first week, but that really is driven by Aaron Rodgers, and even at the Bears, it is funny though. If I was thinking this earlier, if if Aaron Rodgers actually does the Vikings, because people are like, oh, he means the Steelers. The Steelers are playing at the Bears this year, but he, but he, I think there is a chance he means the Vikings when he says that as well. And I don't really think people are talking about that too much. But yeah, I see a lot of losses on the back half of the schedule. I really do. I think at the Chargers will be excellent. I think the Bengals offense, the Bears this
The
year, I think
Steelers
could be
don't get
dynamic.
better as the season goes along. They don't get better. Their scheme gets
Right.
exposed defensively, and then offensively they fall apart too. So that's not good for them if their schedule gets harder. It's not. It's just, and we saw that last year, and we'll probably see that again this year.
You
Go
know,
ahead,
the
man. I
last
didn't mean
time
to
the
interrupt.
Steelers got better to end the season was whenever Kenny Pickett was a rookie at the helm.
Oh,
Just saying. So
Well, that was because see, the only time they get
Oh, it
now,
was-
and here's the thing:
excuses
when their schedule's
here.
easier in the second half of the season, you see them string wins, especially when Tomlin's winning streak is on the line. His going so that year, right? We
I
were like
hated
5
winning
and 8.
streak.
I think we were 5 and 8 that year. And
we're probably
strung
worse. We were
4
probably
wins.
3-7 at one point. So.
Yeah, but then we were 5 and 8, and then we strung like 4 wins in a row to get to 9 and 8. So, and we play like teams like the Raiders. Like we played some bad teams. Like that's not the case. Although we do play the Browns and Miami,
Well,
which
yeah,
should be now Miami's a good team, but Miami at Heinz Field in December. If you don't win that game, then the Steelers are a really bad football team. So I'm sorry, that's just the case.
I was gonna say that. Yeah, like you could chalk up at least one win for the Steelers at the end of the year, and that's at home against Miami. Because I've never seen Miami come up big in December, let alone in cold weather.
Now's
you
the
know,
time against Pittsburgh.
That would be something.
If
And
you
even-
think
but
about
even-
it,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I'll just wrap up with this. Like even at the Browns to end the season, second to last game, it might be really cold. It could be snowing. Every year at the end, it's like snowing in Cleveland when the Steelers go to play there, and they just lost to them last year on the road. That could be a game the Steelers very much lose as well, especially if they're not good. If they're seven
We've been
and 8
consistently losing to the Browns on the road the past few years. I don't remember the
Because we
last
don't-
time we won at Cleveland.
because we're mediocre, and when mediocre teams go on
Yeah.
the road, they can lose no matter
anybody.
what, to anybody. Yeah. So that's all I want to add. But yeah, there's some home games that the Steelers gonna win. There's some really fun home games. Obviously the Ravens every year, the Bengals, but the Bills at home should be a fun matchup. I think at the Lions that'll be fun. The Steelers don't
I think
play
they're
them
going to
very
get
much.
smoked against Buffalo. They're going to get smoked.
They very well might get smoked. Yeah, but it will be interesting too early at the Patriots. I think that's a good indicator game because I think the Jets in Week 1. I think the Jets could be figuring stuff out just like the Steelers could. But I think if Mason Rudolph's the incumbent, he has that familiarity a little more than maybe Justin Fields. That could be a win for the Steelers and the Seahawks at home. Who knows? But I think that at New England game will really get us an idea of where this team's at because I think New England is going to be a team that's improved. To what degree, nobody really knows. But I think that could be a game, if they play well and win, it could mean something because I think New England could be, I don't think they're going to be last year's Washington. People are saying that. I don't think that's the case at all. I really don't. But Jane Daniels is special. And I think Drake May is good, but he's not Jane Daniels. But I think if they play well on the road, and the Patriots have a good defense now. They load up on defense. I think that could be a good indicator. Or if they play poorly. I mean, either way, it could be a good indicator of where this team could end up in 2025. But we all know they'll end up 9 and 8 anyway, probably. But
We've
who knows?
seen Nate. We've seen Nate like Mike Tomlin early in the season against a new coach and a younger or a rookie quarterback or a quarterback who's new to that team. Like usually that's a mixture of success for the Steelers, and that's what you see with those first 3 matchups, right? Seattle. Although I think Mike McDonald is doing a good job over there. I think that's only going to get better.
But still,
Sam
second-year
Darnold, right?
coach.
Second-year coach, new quarterback. Jets,
Yeah.
new quarterback, new coach. New
Right.
England, we love Mike Vrabel, but new coach, second-year quarterback. Like, I feel like those 3 games, though, set up well for the Steelers, especially early on in the season when those teams are trying to figure out what they are. Okay, well, all right. Well, then we'll move on. And anything, Jake Bell, anything else to add? Nope. Okay.
No, you guys were on point with all that.
We will move on to. Oh, yeah, I want to talk real briefly about some NFL contract things. Some things that have gone on around the league. First of all, Brock Purdy, as I like to call him, Little Brock Purdy, gets a big contract extension. I think most people are saying, don't do this. The 49ers end up appeasing Brock, despite doing absolutely nothing last year. And he gets a big contract. Now they'll be in cap hell, probably. They're paying Ayuk all that money. I mean, you have to pay your quarterback eventually, but I don't think Brock Purdy was worth it, especially when he is basically a system quarterback. Shanahan has worked with all sorts of quarterbacks on the cheap. I mean, Garoppolo, and found ways to win. So, not all sorts. It was just Garoppolo. But
Nick Mullins for a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like it's just I don't like it. I feel like Shanahan is a bit over his skis in terms of he thinks that he doesn't need another quarterback to win. Like what he has now, he can win with because he's so smart. Instead of realizing that, you know what, if I want my team to be the best it can be, I draft a quarterback and, make Brock Purdy earn his contract, and kind of get ahead of the game. And now you're just kind of like, you're taking a big risk here. And I'm sure they'll win games this year. They have a very easy schedule. But there's really no excuses for Brock Purdy anymore with this contract. And I think it puts the 49ers, I think this traps the 49ers long term, especially with an older defense. You have a receiver on a big contract as well. I don't love the situation. I think, Seattle and the Rams, those organizations, those teams are going to get better. And those organizations are well run. So I am not a big fan of this, but I want to hear your guys' takes on the Brock Purdy signing and the state of the 49ers.
Yeah, it's so tough because, Brock Purdy, obviously we know the 49ers, the whole team regressed. I think we can say that, and with injuries and everything, so you can maybe not put all the blame on Purdy, but it does surprise me that they're doing this so soon, especially since I believe this coming season will be his last year, so that could have been more of a prove-it deal. Maybe he could test out for agency, whatever. But it was kind of surprising to see them do this now and not maybe try to use that money to maybe build around Purdy more for the season, because the ideal situation for the 49ers would have been to win a Super Bowl with Purdy under his rookie deal. Unfortunately, they came up just a touchdown short, really, in the Super Bowl anyway. But yeah, to me, this is not the ideal situation for the 49ers. It seemed like they were more desperate to make this happen, to have a quarterback locked up long term, because as much as Brock Purdy may not have taken that next step forward last year, if they don't have him, they don't really have anyone. And while we know that Kyle Shanahan can develop quarterbacks, it's still no guarantee, right? There's still quarterbacks that couldn't work out. Like, C.J. Beathard didn't come in and tear it up. You know what I mean? So it's definitely an interesting situation. Again, I would have waited until after this season to make that decision, but 49ers, he's their guy, so they have to find ways to build around him if they can, even with the cap situation. So it maybe that hinders Christian McCaffrey's future, right? You don't want to have him under contract as a running back while you sign Brock Purdy. So it's just a crazy spot. So I guess we'll see what happens.
I do want to say, I want to reword what I said earlier. I think when I say Kyle Shanahan thinks he's so smart, I think he thinks that Brock Purdy is good enough where he can maximize his talent with his scheme all the time. Right. And that's why he feels like it's worth paying him. Instead of getting a guy who can do things outside of that scheme and make special plays and have a special arm. And I think they gave up on getting that guy because they wanted that in Trey Lance. And they spent the third pick on him, right? And now they've just given up on that dream and they've said, we're going to just settle for Brock Purdy. And now it's like, because Brock Purdy is built on the scheme and the team around him. Now the team around him isn't going to be able to improve as much with that contract. But go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, I largely agree with you guys. I think it was a little bit of an overpay. I would have probably paid him just given the situation that the 49ers are under. But I don't know, what was it, like 51, 52 million a year. That's a lot. That's a lot for somebody who I think is about middle of the pack, maybe a little bit better than middle of the pack in terms of quarterbacks in this league. I mean, we saw last year. I mean, Peyton, you talked about no excuses this year. There were no excuses like in his whole career because before this he had all the skill. I mean, as great a skill position group you could possibly concoct. I mean, he had obviously McCaffrey, but you talk about Samuel and Ayuk and Kittle and everybody. I mean, just weapons galore for him. They're really. I mean, how could you fail if you're a competent quarterback in the NFL? But now I think he got paid. There still are no excuses, but the receiver group is a little thinner. The McCaffrey was hurt a lot last year. What's his health availability going to be this year? Kittle gets hurt a little bit, but I think Kittle. We love Kittle. Kittle's awesome. But I think Ayuk. I mean, he got paid and he didn't play very much. And so you're relying on Juwan.
He wasn't all that good.
And he wasn't very good. So I think it is if you're worth 51, 52 million, you elevate these guys and you have a good season, not only team record wise. I think with that schedule, you should have a pretty good record regardless. But in the playoffs and even throughout the regular season, elevating these receivers you have around you to play better and to perform, especially in the playoffs though, because I think they will make it. I think I'd have to look more. It's not like official for me that they're going to make it, but I think with that schedule, it should be very manageable to do so. But I think if you are worth that kind of money, right, kind of really close to around where Burrow and Allen and Lamar are at, and Mahomes even, then you gotta elevate the guys around you and not just be kind of that Brock Purdy that we saw in the first 2 years where, yeah, he was having great statistical seasons, but a lot of that, I think we can all agree, was aided by the wide receiver core and the running back room that he had around him. So it will be very interesting to see what the Niners do, but I do think they've kind of fallen on hard times a little bit. I think everybody viewed them as like one of the staple organizations in the NFL just a couple of years ago. They were in the Super Bowl. They were really close to winning it multiple times. But now their draft was a little iffy to me. I think Michael Williams is going to be good. I think they did some nice things, but I think it left a little bit to be desired. And now this decision kind of puts them where they have to have a good season and make a deep run for it to be considered a success and to get back into the limelight of one of the better and more well-respected organizations in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree, especially about their drafts. Like especially like last year, like drafting Ricky Pearsall in the first round. Like, what was that? Like, I think Ricky Pearsall could be a good player, especially now that Debo's gone. But like, was that like a smart pick there? Like, he was more of a second round talent. But anyway, yeah, I agree. I think we're all in agreement here. I want to move on to a couple other situations. Real briefly, the Falcons, Nate, before, I didn't even know that this was going on. Kyle Pitts is holding out because he's getting $11 million on his fifth-year option and he wants a new contract. But Kyle Pitts, you can make all the excuses, well, he hasn't had a good quarterback. But like Brock Bowers, you were the fourth overall pick. And Brock Bowers with Ham and Eggers won what was breaking records last year as a first-round tight end. So I don't get what he's thinking. He wants a new what leverage does he have here in this situation? I have no idea. The Falcons should be in no rush or no desperation to give him the contract extension he's looking for. But that sucks for the team that he's not there because, you want Michael Penix, who's essentially going into his first year as our starting quarterback, to be able to, mix well with his weapons. And Kyle Pitts should be a big part of that for this year at least. But that's just not the case right now.
Yeah, it seems like Kyle Pitts, like you mentioned with Michael Penix, I don't know if he's making the argument saying, hey, you need this guy to develop. I can potentially help do that. You might as well pay me now. That could be a reason why he's holding out. I don't know. Maybe he just wants to be safe and secure with money, but I don't know. It's kind of a weird situation. It's like far from the Le'Veon Bell situation, or I guess like whoever else you say held out, but like it is kind of a weird situation. That would be the only argument I would assume, right? Because even though Kyle Pitts has underperformed in terms of the 4th overall pick standards, he's still, I'd say, a good player, right? I don't think you can argue that he's this bad player that, why would he want an extension? But it is kind of weird because he hasn't had that productivity that you'd expect from these guys holding out. So
Yeah, this is a hilarious story because Kyle Pitts is making $11 million next year. It might be a rude awakening for him, but buddy, you go in the free agent market, you're not worth much more than that at all, really. I don't know how much he would be viewed as worth. That's a great point, Payne, about Brock Bowers. In a much more unstable situation, he's not only thrived, but he's one of the better tight ends in all of football now. That's clear. And Kyle Pitts is somebody who caught 600 yards, had 600 yards receiving this past season. And I know for Kirk Cousins was ineffective for a while, and then Michael Penix getting thrust into the action. But, I mean, you see it every year with his drops. I mean, he just drops these passes that you're like, how do you drop that? And he's not consistent enough to warrant top of the market money from a tight end, and his production is not nearly what the top of the tight end market is getting. I mean, George Kittle gets 1,000 yards a year. Travis Kelce right up there, although he's kind of declining, but he's getting older. That's to be expected. But he's right around 600, 700 yards a year, and everybody. I mean, even when the Falcons took him, everybody's like, "That's a reach." That's a bit of a reach there with Kyle Pitts. But even though he's a first-round talent regardless, but he just has never taken that next step to warrant, I think, the contract that he's looking for. I don't know quite what he's looking for, but if he's looking top of the market money from the Falcons, he's not going to get it, and they'll let him walk, and they'll get a tight end who could get similar production, I think, in free agency or through the draft as one of their higher picks. So I think this just doesn't really make sense for Kyle Pitts. His production does not warrant him getting a contract extension before his 5th year option. I don't understand. It's just kind of mind-boggling for me. But that was one of the weird. We always have every year these weird situations where somebody who wants more money, and you're like, you're not good enough to get more. You haven't earned that money. We see that every year. I think Kyle Pitts might be the one. It looks like he will be the one for this off season, where he just is demanding more money, but his play on the field does not really warrant that.
And then for a bigger storyline, the Bengals have 2 big situations. The number one thing is, which is kind of expected, Trey Hendrickson, and he's voiced his frustration, and I don't know how they're going to get a deal done there because it seems like that relationship is completely just destroyed. Lack of trust. But I mean, hey, if we saw with Myles Garrett, right? Like that looked to be broken, and boom, $40 million. So, but here's the thing with the Bengals, and we'll get to. I'll mention the second thing. The big thing with them is they paid. Okay, you have to pay Jamar Chase, but they also paid T. Higgins, and now they find themselves in a situation where it's going to be very, very difficult for them to improve any other part of the team, specifically the defense, because we already know the Bengals are frugal generally, and they appeased T. Higgins and Jamar Chase because that's what Burrow wanted. and now you're stuck to the point where you can't even pay. This is the second thing, the second contract situation with the Bengals. They can't even pay their first round pick in time for OTAs. They can't get the contract signed. And I read a little more on this. His dad was talking, Shamar Stewart's dad was talking about this, about like the whole situation. He said, it's not a sense of that we want more money. It's just we want to be treated like every other Bengals first round pick. We want the same amount as every other Bengals first round pick, including Amari Mims last year. And he said that some of the verbiage didn't set up Shamar contract wise for the long term that he's there. So it's, I mean, and this defense is the main issue. They have to find a way to get both of these guys. Well, Shamar, I'm sure that they have to eventually. Shamar has all the leverage in the world because he was a first round pick. But they have to, I don't know, they have to figure out a way to keep those guys on the field, number one, especially Trey Hendrickson, and, you know, develop players, defensive players through the draft and through smaller free agent signings if they want to have success on defense.
Yeah, it's interesting with T. Higgins. Honestly, like, if I were the Bengals, like, probably would have traded him at last year's deadline. I know they were going through that playoff push, but at the same time, when you have 8 losses, the season, no offense, is pretty much over at that point. And with a guy like T. Higgins, as much as you want to have 2 very good receivers, it's not mandatory to have to win a Super Bowl, especially to pay those 2 guys. It makes it even more unlikely, right? And with T. Higgins if you trade him at the deadline, you either trade him to a team that's desperate enough, that's in Super Bowl contention, that maybe wants that secondary receiver to go along with their primary guy, or you trade him to a team that maybe has no receivers. They want a number 1 guy, and T. Higgins, I feel, could be capable to do that, and they end up planning on extending him anyway after the season, just to solely make him the guy. But I feel like they kind of trapped themselves focusing too much on T. Higgins, and I don't know, maybe Joe Burrow wouldn't have been happy if they traded him or just let him go. But at the same time, you need to improve that defense, because Joe Burrow, he's a generational talent at quarterback, and
he doesn't need T. Higgins. He doesn't
exactly.
need T. Higgins to be great.
Exactly, and you kind of handcuff yourself, and that's why now you have this situation with Trey Hendrickson. You know, this is gonna make him more unhappy, right? Because they're saying, well, if you're willing to pay all this money to T. Higgins, why aren't you, like, I make your defense relevant, right? So that's definitely going to strain a situation. Ultimately, I feel like Hendrickson's not going to be a Bengal much longer, because you can't win with a strained relationship like that. It's so hard to do that. You need everyone fully in sync, and if that's not the case, it just creates distractions. And so it's an interesting decision with the Bengals, but ultimately I feel like they could have traded Higgins at the deadline, probably could have gotten something worth something in the draft, and then could have drafted his replacement. So it's definitely an interesting situation. So
Yeah, what a dysfunctional. I mean, this franchise is just. I've never heard that. I really haven't. You never hear they haven't been able to sign they're lowballing their first round pick.
That's crazy.
It's insane. They're so awful. I mean, it sucks for Bengals fans. So obviously I agree with both of you. You guys made excellent points there, and especially Jake. I mean, 100% right. They had those 8 losses early. What were they? 4-8, 5-8. Now they end the season, and what do they remember from last year? Oh, they had a great end of the season, but they didn't make the playoffs, right? And it gets you nowhere. Whereas if you did trade T. Higgins, then you get some real value back. Maybe, some picks to really improve this defense for 2025 and beyond. I think it's a great point. But they clearly chose T. Higgins over Trey Hendrickson. They made the wrong decision again. Obviously, that's not discounting T. Higgins as a player. He's tremendous. But like you guys have mentioned, Joe Burrow will still be excellent with or without T. Higgins as wide receiver on the Cincinnati Bengals. And this defense with Trey Hendrickson was the life preserver, if there was a life, if the Bengals defense even stayed afloat last year, because he would be somebody who, it's a third down situation, every once in a while, maybe once a game, he'd get a huge sack and he'd get you off the field, right? and then every other possession they give up a touchdown or something. But he would get that one stop for your defense. He'd get that huge sack or whatever, and he would get you some momentum as a team. Now, if he's not there long term, or even I don't know, like if he what he's going to do this year, if he's going to hold out a little bit, what the situation is going to look like, then this defense, and then Shamar Stewart, if he's not playing because you didn't give him the appropriate rookie money, then now it leaves your defense even in a worse position maybe than last year. Even though you did I think they did a good job adding in the draft on the defensive side, but it's just it puts you at a net negative almost with these situations if Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart aren't even on the field. I just think they have no idea what they're doing. I think they got influenced, and I think they caved to the pressure of signing T. Higgins because I think everybody was clamoring for it. But at the end of the day, and this is a team that's a franchise that's very frugal with their money, and they have been for years. They do not spend to the level that their fans want to, or frankly as they should. And so I think that was kind of an impulse signing T. Higgins there. And I think it could really impact because I think they're unfamiliar with signing guys, so they signed T. Higgins to that long-term money, and now I think their defense is in a worse spot than even they were maybe before because I think Trey Hendrickson's one of the more underappreciated players in the NFL. I think if he's not on that defense last year, they are historically awful. I really do. I just think they're historic. I mean, last year they were awful to begin with. But I think they would be just leaps and bounds worse than even they were last year, which is crazy to say. But I mean, nobody talks about him. He's right up there leading the league in sacks, and he's not talked about nearly as much as T.J. Watt or Myles Garrett or Micah Parsons or some of these guys are in these discussions as the best edge rushers. So I think the Bengals, like they always do, made a dumb financial decision.
Okay, so to wrap up the show, we don't talk a lot of NBA or NHL on this show, but we are at the climax of both seasons, and I gotta say, I'm not like big into both, but I've been watching, especially NBA, I've been watching it, and it's just different new stars, different teams. Well, except in hockey, it's kind of the same teams, actually, but I've been in on Nate. We love our Edmonton Oilers. We're rooting for them to get back to the cup and win it this time against Florida. As last night in the NHL, Florida 3-1 lead, took a third period 3-1 lead in the series, had a third period goal to win the game. It was a great move by their captain, one of the best players in the league, Scott Barkov. He found one dude. He made a great move around the defender and had a good assist and got the game-winning goal to send them back to defend their Stanley Cup. And then last night, Minnesota apparently just quit in the NBA, the Timberwolves, and Oklahoma City, the best team in the NBA on paper, although they're very young. They are in the NBA championship, and whoever they face, although it's looking like it's going to be the Pacers, they will be the favorite to win the NBA championship. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts on all of these series, these conference final series in both leagues, and what you've liked so far and what stood out to you. And you know what's crazy? I just realized this: all four series had a 3-1 lead. So like Edmonton has a 3-1 lead and Indiana has a 3-1 lead. We'll see how that goes tonight. Both of those games tonight, and then the Timberwolves 1-5. Or I'm sorry, the Thunder 1-5 and the Panthers 1-5. So that could be all Lakers in 5. Timberwolves, remember Lakers in 5? Now it's everyone else in 5 but the Lakers. So yeah.
Yeah, so I'll leave it to the NHL for you guys, as much as it's a very entertaining sport, especially in the playoffs. Unfortunately, I haven't had time to really keep up, so I don't want to give false opinions on what I believe in hockey. But for the NBA, I've been paying attention a little bit. It's incredible how good of a defense the Thunder have. I mean, obviously we know how productive they can be offensively, right? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the MVP. You got a lot of role players on that team that can score as well. But to give credit to their defense, I mean, Anthony Edwards, he's a very good scorer. I think we all know that. And they also have an offense that has the ability to score. and they did well in the playoffs. Obviously, they made the Western Conference Finals, but for the Thunder to just shut them down in an elimination game, really, I mean that's just incredible on their part. They deserve to be in the finals. They were the best team in the West. They are the best team in the West, and it's definitely really cool to see. And for the East, I think this is a really fun playoff matchup. I know, the Pacers right now do have the upper hand, but I think see, like the Knicks, I have a soft spot for Jalen Brunson, the Villanova guys. So I think that's a cool thing that they're in this spot. But for the Pacers, I mean, seeing Tyrese Halliburton just completely elevate this team is incredible. You don't really see a guy that shows you he is a superstar that can win the playoffs, especially in today's game where he's not averaging 25, 30 points a game. Or playoffs is a different story, but in the regular season, he was averaging around 18. Obviously points per game doesn't really matter. You're as a point guard, you need to really elevate your team, set a tone on offense. But see Halliburton just completely control these games. It's real cool to see. And I know, they beat my Cavaliers. I was really disappointed because I had high hopes during the season that, this would be the year that they could make the finals without LeBron. But just to see Halliburton do his thing, I mean, it's definitely incredible to see. It's definitely been a fun NBA playoffs for sure. As much as I should have probably watched a little bit more with these other teams, I have been paying attention a little bit to the Pacers and the Knicks, and I think it is a really cool matchup. I think it's good for both fan bases. So
Yeah, a lot to get into here. I'll just start off with the hockey. Yeah, not to toot my own horn, I had a perfect bracket going for a while there, and I had Edmonton going. A lot of these people are like, "Oh wow, the Oilers, they're doing it again. Let's go Oilers." Oh wait, you had them losing in the first round. You said the Kings would beat them this year. Wait a second. No, they didn't beat them. They never do. Why would anyone
Connor
think
McDavid.
otherwise?
How do you bet against Connor McDavid?
No, you can't. You can't do it. And
You can't
McDavid
do that. You
and
can't.
Draisaitl and Stuart Skinner. You can't bet against Stuart Skinner.
He's boomer bust.
Yeah, but yeah, the Oilers Stars. I thought the Stars would put up more of a fight. I really did. I thought
They look.
I had the
They look dead. They look tired. They looked like that third period of Game 4. They looked like it's just there was no fight.
Nothing.
There was no
There was
offensive
nothing
possessions like that were good or
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, they gave a lot in that 7-game series to Colorado in the first round. Colorado's a very good team. They were very evenly matched teams,
Yeah.
and they gave everything they had to win that series. And they beat Winnipeg. People are like, "Oh, Winnipeg, this is the year." And it was the same roster as last year. They always lose in the first or second round. So they kind of handle Winnipeg. But the Oilers are a different animal. And people are saying, "Oh, the Oilers had a down regular season." But come playoff time, they're going to perform, right? Your stars in really every sport, your stars are what carries you in the playoffs. And the Oilers' stars are better than everybody else, and almost better because Florida Panthers are right there again, and they got some star power, and they have a lot of depth on that team. So that'll be really fun if it's Florida Edmonton again. I think that could be a tremendous series again. But the Panthers just demolished Carolina. I mean, if you look at them on paper, Florida's much deeper anyway. Carolina relies heavily on defense. They don't let you get good shots off. They just don't. And they have one star in Sebastian Aho. And then a lot of really nice players, but not those star players that get those huge goals. We saw Aho 2 goals to take a 2-0 lead for Carolina, and then the Panthers kick in the second gear and are able to get that 3-2 lead and then the 4-3 lead to put it away. They just have more of a scoring ability, and that's what won them over. They really dominated the Hurricanes in that series, but it will be really exciting. I think Florida and Edmonton, if that's the case, unless Dallas. I just don't see Dallas the way they've played winning 3 straight games. It's going to be really tough, and they'd have to win one on the road as well. So that'll be cool. But I really haven't watched too much of that series because it has been blowouts. There's been blowouts left and right. But Edmonton, you can't, like you said, Payne, you can't doubt McDavid, you can't doubt Draisaitl and those guys. But yeah, in the NBA, it's been crazy. I am sympathetic to you, Jake Bell. I also the Cavs. I don't know why. I'm not a Cleveland guy at all, but I've been a Cavs fan since LeBron and Kyrie. I love Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Love, and I've been a fan since then. So that was tough seeing the Pacers do what they did to the Cavs. But you got to tip the cap to the Pacers. They were just a better team. They were just a better, more prepared team, and they're so deep. They're just what we've seen in these playoffs. depth wins out. We saw the Nuggets. I think if the Nuggets had a couple other bench guys, I think they would have beat the Thunder because they were right there with the Thunder in 7 games. And every game at the end, the Nuggets are completely gassed. They won 7 against the Clippers. They're completely gassed at the end. Jokic is he's not in the best shape, to begin with anyway. Although, he has incredible durability. But he's gassed. Murray was sick throughout the second round. He was gassed, and we saw the depth wins out. Depth's winning out in these playoffs, and the Thunder have so much depth. It's not even, and they don't let off the gas defensively, like you mentioned, Jake. It's a great point. Their defense, last night against Minnesota, every other possession they're getting a steal and a fast break opportunity. That's what happened in Game 7 against the Nuggets. The Nuggets just kept turning it over to them, and the Thunder got so many easy opportunities to where they could build the 20 and 25 and 30-point lead. And then if they alternate baskets, they win by 30. They don't care. They could put random guys in at the end of the bench and prepare for the finals. But so I think the Thunder, yeah, I had them getting to the finals. A lot of people were like, "Oh, the Lakers, they got Luka and LeBron now, and Austin Reeves. They're not only gonna win the first round, they're gonna beat the Thunder in the Western Conference Finals." And it's like they have no depth. I was saying this to my buddy Gabe, who, congrats Gabe, his Thunder are in the finals.
Yeah.
He's rooting hard for them to make it, win it all. But we were talking, and they just have no depth. We could see that going into the playoffs, the Lakers had no depth. And
they have no bigs. They have no good bigs.
And they had no
because
bigs.
They lost
They're
AD.
right.
Yeah.
And not only that, they lost that guy from the Hornets that they couldn't acquire. So.
Yeah, they didn't get Mark Williams, and that would have helped them. But I just still don't think they were that good of a team. They were a good regular season team, but and then on the Eastern side, this has been a great series. Pacers, Knicks. It's been very even. I know Indiana's up 3-1. It could have easily been 2-2. And but I think the Pacers have played better. I think they're a slightly better team. I think their depth is what has carried them in this series as well. And to Tibbs' credit, he's going to his bench a little bit now with DeLon Wright, who I love. DeLon Wright. He's been a veteran. He's been a pro throughout his career. DeLon Wright and Landry Shamet, bringing them in. But he should have been doing that earlier. If he was going to bring them in to begin with, he should have brought them in the first round against Detroit, against Boston, to get them comfortable, get them a rapport in the offense. And then in this series, maybe they're a little better, right? And maybe their bench has played about as well as you could ask them to. Mitchell Robinson's been great. Deuce McBride has been great, provides great energy and defense. But in the end, it's just Tyrese Halliburton taking that next step. It's been a lot have been made about the overrate that kind of thing. It was a stupid thing, but I could see it. I could see it because he puts up 18 points a game in the regular season. In the regular season, he's just not as valuable as when the playoffs come around and more eyeballs are on him, and there's more pressure to make the good read, whether it's actually shooting it or passing it. And that's, I think, we'll be seeing the difference between him and Brunson. They both had some crazy scoring outputs. Halliburton's got 30. This past game, 32, 15, and 12. The triple-double. But
and he had no turnovers. We're talking about
no
Halliburton.
Turnovers.
Yeah.
And no turnovers.
That was like some sort of record, wasn't it? Some sort of like no one's ever done that or something.
Yeah.
Like in the playoffs or something. Yeah.
Yeah, special. But that's been the difference where Brunson is obviously a score first guy, and he needs to be for the Knicks. He needs to score. He's just tremendous. It's night and day from even Dallas. He was a good player in Dallas. He's a great player with the Knicks, but he's a score first guy, and his team relies on him to get buckets, not only throughout the game but especially in clutch time when the Knicks have been so good this season. But Halliburton, whereas Brunson doesn't necessarily always make that pass, which might be the smart play, Halliburton always does. He just always makes the right play. I think that's the difference, another difference in this series. I think the Knicks probably win Game 5 here to make it 3-2, but I think Indiana wins in 6, or maybe they might win tonight, who knows. But I think that's going to be a great finals, which some people it's so crazy. People are like, oh, oh, it's the Lakers and Celtics and the Warriors winning all these championships. We want to see more teams involved and winning it. Now it's going to be 7 different teams winning in the last 7 years. But now they're saying, oh, nobody's going to watch this finals. It's OKC and Indiana. If you're a basketball fan and you like watching good basketball, you're going to tune in every second of this series because that's going to be good basketball between 2 really deep teams with 2 star point guards and some really good options around them. So we Siakam and Nemhard for Indiana and Miles Turner, of course. And then for OKC, Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams and Isaiah Hartenstein and Lou Dort and Alex Caruso. You can go down the list. So it's going to be tremendous. I think it's going to be an awesome finals. I do think OKC deserves a slight edge, but I think it's going to be must watch for any actual basketball fan who don't care about. Since when do we care about ratings? Everybody's always like, oh, we don't care about the ratings when the NBA had low ratings. Now it's like, oh, we need ratings. So it's just I think it's going to be an awesome finals, and I think it's going to be some much watch, really good basketball.
So I'll wrap up with some major takeaways. I'll keep it as short as I can. First, for the NBA, I think what's great for the league, no matter the markets, what you saw in these Eastern Conference Finals, outside of Luka, and both conference finals, outside of Luka, you see the next and the guy from Atlanta, but Atlanta sucks. And Ja Morant, I guess, but he's, we know his issues. So, but we saw the next generation of great guard play. And that's what the league is now. Although I feel like it's been this playoffs has been much more physical, which I also think is good for the league. But you see the star guards that are the future: Halliburton, Ant Edwards, Jalen Brunson, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but I just feel like all 4 of those guys, like, it's just like, wow, these guys are just great, and they're going to be great for a long time. Now, I want to talk about Ant. Everyone's gone really hard on Ant Edwards. And, like, his post-game comments after Game 4, like, we could kind of tell, like, oh, geez, this team is just, like, they're done. And I think people have to remember, like, he's very good, but he's 23 years old. He has to mature. He has to get better, when teams are making sure he's, not getting shots. He has to find a way to make shots and make the right plays. And I feel like that's going to come with time. And you have to remember that, SGA is older. He's been around a little longer, but he's come on the scene. I don't know how many years. Nate, do you know how many years he's been in the league?
He's been in the league, I think this is his 7th or 8th year. Yeah.
So he's a late bloomer, SGA.
Yeah.
Kind of,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
he was good. He was good. Yeah, he was with the Clippers his rookie year, and he was good. And then they made, I don't know if you've seen this, it's one of the more terrible trades we've seen, the Paul George trade, where the Clippers got Paul George, and the Thunder not only got SGA, but they got, a dozen picks.
That's how they've developed their team, is all these draft picks they got.
Yep, yeah. So he's played since 2018, 2019.
But, like, these last 2 years, though, I feel like 2-3 years is where he's really, like, shown, like you never really heard. I didn't, like, as a casual, like, I don't really follow the NBA. I was trying to start to now. Like, that you heard his name, and, like, man, he is the best. There's no question he is the best. If you need someone to score the ball, he is the best scorer right now in the league. Am I right about that?
I mean, points per game, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, even, he is the best, and it's the easiest for him to get a good shot. Because he can shoot the 3. His pull-up jump shot is lethal. He makes almost every one of them, and he can drive right by you. So, yeah, I would agree with that. I would, yeah.
So the Knicks and Indiana, it has been an even series, but what's so great about Indiana, like, I didn't really watch them until this series. They are their team name. They are the Pacers. They outrun you, and they are the most durable team on the court. They are so energetic in the fourth quarter. That's how they won Game 1. Game 1 was the difference in this series because they just showed, like, we can come back from anything, and we can shoot as many threes and run the floor with anybody. So now the thing is with the Pacers, if you get them to draw fouls, you have to slow the game down, right? And that's where the Knicks have found some success, but they just haven't. The Knicks just haven't Jalen Brunson and Cat, like it just hasn't completely gelled. Although Cat had an excellent game 3. But what I'm excited is I'm assuming the Pacers will move on. Like it's gonna be the Thunder and their great defense. Like it just feels like there's like 8 guys on the court when they're on defense against the Pacers' ability to run the floor and get buckets in transition. That's gonna be a battle of teams that play great a certain way, but in the opposite way, and to see how that unfolds, how which team has the edge. And I look, we've talked. Nate and I have talked about this. Like Oklahoma City's a little the way they play SGA, the free throw baiting, the free throw merchant, the foul baiting, and the free throw merchant thing. They're a little hard to root for. They're not, as we like to say, don't have a lot of riz. Right? Not a lot of riz. They don't have a ton of riz.
They're a very corny group. Like, it's kind of corny what they do. Yeah.
And the Nuggets, I got to give the Nuggets a lot of credit, man. There's no reason they should have been in that series with them, and they did. And I thought they were going to pull this off because Thunder's just a young team, but they didn't. I mean, they were just gassed, like you said. And but I will be rooting for Indiana. I really like Tyrese Halliburton. He's just a fun guy, and he's fun to watch play. Now, going to the NHL, I'm not a hockey guy much at all, but I really love Edmonton. I just love their team, the players they have surrounding Connor McDavid. And Connor McDavid has always been compared to as the next Sidney Crosby, I feel like. Like, they both play the same position. They both, he wears 97, Crosby wears 87. Just the way they move on the ice and their puck handling, it's just incredible. And they just elevate the players around them. And I hope that McDavid will age like fine wine, like Crosby. But it's crazy how their careers are slowly like starting to like align, because what happened in the beginning of Sid's career, right? In 2008, he lost the Stanley Cup to the Red Wings, right? Am I correct on that? Yeah. He lost the Stanley Cup to the Red Wings, and then the next year, he comes back, beats the Red Wings. And now it could be that way for Connor McDavid. He loses to the Panthers. The Panthers are an excellent, excellent team. But he loses. You talk about Scott Barkov, and then you add Brad Marchand into the mix. It's just crazy. But anyway, so now McDavid could lose to that team the first time around, then win the next year. So it's like the same like career path, and like that's just kind of crazy. But I am really rooting for Edmonton. Canada deserves. It's been a while since Canada's had a cup, and Edmonton, those fans. I mean, Florida. Let's be honest. There's a lot. They didn't have much of a fan base until recently. Edmonton is a historic hockey franchise, so definitely rooting for Edmonton and Indiana.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, Florida. I mean, Florida's doesn't scream hockey to begin with, and it's a distracted market down there in the Miami area. They have a really good fan base now. If you look at the past several years, they didn't do much winning. Of
course, they're winning. You have to win.
I know, but like
in that market, you have to win.
With most franchises though, you get a lot more support when you win, right? And so
right, but in a crowded market, you really need to. And right. when you're a newer, their franchise hasn't been around that long, I don't think.
No, they're an expansion. Yeah, they're an expansion franchise. It is. It will be really. It'll be a great series, I think, for sure, because both teams are really deep. The thing with Edmonton this year, they're like secondary stars, right? You talk about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Shaq Hyman. They had a little bit down years in the regular season, which is why they didn't finish as well as they probably could have. But now in the playoffs, they've been excellent, like we thought they would. And they're both teams are very deep. And I think what it'll come down to, could Stuart Skinner match Sergei Bobrovsky? Can he match one of the better goaltenders of the NHL? And he has been really, really good in these playoffs. So we'll see if that happens. If they do that, I think Edmonton wins. But it'll be very, very cinema in both the NHL and in NBA.
I think what these both playoffs have shown is that you can't just assume, you can't just look, oh well, this team, what has this team done in the regular season, what were their injuries in the regular season. You have to look at how are they set up for success in the playoffs, what have they done previously in the playoffs, and how are those coaching staffs and teams built, especially in terms of depth. You have to look at that and not just the results in the regular season, because Florida and Edmonton both weren't great teams. I mean, they all in all of their series, they started out on the road, I think, in most of their series. So, and yet here they are, they're going to be back in the Stanley Cup. The Dallas, I feel like, I don't know much about Dallas. I don't know much about anything when it comes to these sports, but they have not looked impressive at all. But you'd expect them to fight back just based on, I mean, they were such a good team in the regular season, and they did, but you did say, like, it took a lot out of them playing Colorado. Like, that was like a championship matchup in the first round, which was crazy.
Yeah, for sure. They're very deep, but they're very deep, like Edmonton is. But I thought I'd see a little more fight, but Edmonton's just been tremendous.
Jake Bell, anything else to add before we end this episode?
No, I don't think so. Like you guys mentioned, I mean, just these are very, very cool playoffs. I know we don't talk about them very much, but this is a very good time to be a fan of the NHL and the NBA in terms of just watching and watching these playoff games. It's definitely been entertaining. So
great time to be a Rockies fan as well. A fan of the NBA and the NHL and the Colorado Rockies.
We will talk about them next episode.
Yeah, we will. Well, we're praying for the Rockies. We are. I'm praying every night
really
that the Rockies, they get this turned around here, because it's really unfortunate, and they have
turn
a great
around
fan
to what
base.
Extent?
Just to be what the Pirates are.
Or at least, it would be awesome if we could see 2017, 2018 type Rockies, but Dodgers, Padres aren't going anywhere, I don't think. So.
You need an offense to be able to do that.
Yeah.
All right, well, that'll do it for this episode. Please like and subscribe. I don't know how many. I feel like we have to put up like that thing. Like 80% of people who watch our videos aren't subscribed. We should put up that graphic somehow.
We gotta get some. One of those people, huh?
The banner.
Yeah, we're gonna. Yeah. we gotta get. If you like our videos, if you like our content, we're hoping to do some different content soon too. Subscribe. And follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and X. The handles are in the description.
And
so thank you all very
Spotify.
much. Spotify, yes. You should look up We Are Family Pittsburgh Sports Podcast.
We're trying to get that up. We're trying to get that up a little. We're very dependent on a couple people to watch our Spotify videos. So.
All right, well, that'll do it. Thank you all so much. Here we go, Steelers. Aaron, let's go Bucks.